seat. Good afternoon. I want to welcome you all to the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission meeting for June the 2nd, 2005, and thank all who are with us this afternoon. Before we get started, I want to announce, as we do at the beginning of each meeting, the meeting's being videotaped in its entirety and it's being cablecast live without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast, SureWest, and Strategic Technologies cable systems. And it's also being webcast live at www.saccounty.net. And in addition to being broadcast live, the meeting will be repeated this Saturday, June 4th at 12 noon. And if anyone would like a VHS copy, be available for checkout in the county library system approximately 7 to 10 days following this meeting. Also would ask if you're here to speak to any matter on the agenda or not on the agenda, that you please fill out a speaker request form and make sure that our clerk, Diane Graber, gets that, and she'll make sure that it gets to me so we can call upon you at the appropriate time. Lastly, would ask your cooperation and please turning off any cell phones, beepers, or pagers, or putting them on silent mode so that we don't have interruptions during the course of the meeting. And with that, then I would ask Diane to call a roll, please.
Yes. Dickinson? Waters?
Here.
Shelby?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
I'm sorry. Smith? McCarty? Here. Collin? McGlashan? Here. Morin?
Here.
Leary?
Here.
Sheedy? Here. Natoli?
Here.
And ex officio McGarvey? We have a quorum.
I understand Mr. Garvey is in a meeting, but maybe joins us later this afternoon. Likewise, I think other commissioners as well. So if you join Mr. Waters and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. If do we have any changes to the agenda, Diane, that we need to note before we start? Okay. If you then want to go ahead and call our first item.
Yes, we have affirmative action report by Comcast, and we have two speakers, Larry Oreski and Andy Dell, that would come to the podium.
Okay, good. We'll have our speakers.
Good afternoon. Chair Natoli, members of the Commission. My name is Larry Oreski. I'm the Senior Director of Human Resources for Comcast. And with me is Andy Dale, who manages the recruiting for Comcast here in the area. And it's my understanding that in August a report's going to be given by staff regarding an overview of the affirmative action plan with some detail from Ken Fleming with the city. So today what I wanted to do is, you have a couple of handouts. We never actually met to do the report for the 03-04 year. So you actually have a synopsis of an 03-04 affirmative action plan and an 04-05 plan in front of you. And what I wanted to do is just, it's okay with you, just kind of go through starting with the 04-05 plan and working backwards, just kind of some of the highlights on there. Okay. And we'll kind of go from there. The data as of March 1st, there's 859 employees in the greater Sacramento area. Of that, about 48% are female, and just over 57% of those are minority in the cable side of the business. In the ad sales side, 54% are female, and just over 17% of those are minority. From a utilization standpoint, we meet or exceed all of the areas in our affirmative action plan, with the exception of one, and it's the problem that this industry has kind of had forever, and that's the female in the technical role. We continue to reach out and to try to find new avenues to search and actively recruit for more women in the area, and we've actually made some strides. We've added numbers in that area, but that's the one area that we continue to fall short. One of the things that we've actually done, starting actually just last month, to do that is that we have a large workforce that's female, but they're primarily not in the technical ranks. So what we're starting to do is some in-house job fairs to offer some of the opportunities to our internal employees to try to see if we can sort of cross-functional, see if some of the, for instance, the people that work in the call center and dispatch some of the areas might have some interest in also becoming more of on the technical side of the business, because it may be something that they just haven't considered, and vice versa. So we're pretty excited. We had a real good in-house job fair just recently, and we've got some folks that are doing some job shadowing. So hopefully when we do this report next year, that will have led to some growth in that area as well. From again, our applicant flow, primarily of the 1,400 applicants that we received, again, we met or exceeded all of the benchmarks that we were measured against for hiring. We hired over 330 people last year, primarily in our call center and technical ranks. We have, 2 years ago, we built a new call center, and we've hired hundreds and hundreds of people as a result of that. We continue to, from turnover, from promotions, from people moving up, higher in those ranks as well as in our technical ranks as well. In going through, the one area on there that's highlighted regarding promotions, the majority of those promotions have to do with people in technical ranks or in the call center. That's more of a self-promotion type of thing. You learn a new skill, so you take on additional responsibilities. So it's more of a self-promotion track as opposed to applying for open jobs and either getting those or not getting those. As far as a community outreach standpoint, Comcast Cares Day is something that we started here. It's a national program with Comcast that we started. We had our second year this year. We had over 400 volunteers in the area for 4 elementary schools. So October 1st, if anyone's interested in attending, this year will be this year's Comcast Cares Day. But as part of that, and overall, we contributed over $400,000 in cash and in-kind donations to local communities and activities.
It might suggest that as that begins to firm up, you might want to, in maybe the next report, or just as an addendum to commission staff and commissioners, let us know where the sites are and so forth. I know in the past we've had some calls, and certainly with the representation you have here, you have the entirety of Sacramento County and its municipalities represented here. So it might be good as you're working schools or parks or daycare centers, whatever it is that you're assisting in, that you get a list firmed up where people might be able to assist in one way or another.
Sure, absolutely. We're going through that finalization now. So we'd love to give you the information when we have it.
But I know that in the past you've certainly given some notice on that, so thanks.
And then from a vendor utilization standpoint, last year we spent approximately $2.6 million with local minority, women-owned, and veteran businesses. If there's no questions about 0405, I'll go to 03.
Okay, let me ask about the 0405 report. Any questions of commissioners at this point? In the summary, you have the written summary that you went through? Okay.
Yeah, I have one.
Mr. Shelby.
I've been gone for a while. In my prior life as a commissioner, prior to Comcast coming on AT&T, we had asked about contracting opportunities. How are you doing when it comes to contracting with minority vendors?
I'm not sure I understand completely as far as...
the contract for services and supplies, how are you doing in terms of African American, Hispanic, Asian-owned businesses in terms of outreach for opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, we have a, for each vendor that we deal with, we have them self-identify, and there's a form in the 0304 plan to see, so we can track them as a minority-owned vendor, so we can see how much money we are spending with them. From an outreach standpoint, I mean, we regularly work within the community and are looking for local businesses, local minority vendors to do business with. So I think we're very proactive in that regard, and we're also now tracking it on a way so we can, measure and see how we're doing in that area.
I'm assuming you're members of the diverse chambers, Asian chamber, Black chamber, Hispanic chamber.
As far as I know, we're members of all. Yes.
Okay. All right. I want to commend you. On the diversity side, I did take a tour, and I was good to see the diversity that was reflected in the workplace. And so I just want to compliment you for that.
Great, I appreciate that. We work hard on our, making these opportunities available, so that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shelley.
I just wanted to thank you also because you did a couple of elementary schools in the Roebla area, and I was there to see the volunteers and to look at all the work they had done before and after. It was quite a difference, so I appreciate all that you do for the city also.
Great. Thank you very much.
Very good. Okay, any other comments? If not, then go to your 0304.
Okay. One of the differences you might notice just in the employee base is somewhat larger in the 0304 report, and that's just from a function of prior to this year, we used to include Chico, Grass Valley, all those areas in one report. We didn't have the ability to separate them off. Now we do, so that's what shows why there's a difference in total employee base. But Again, back in 0304, 44.7% female, 46.7% were minority. Both of those numbers actually increased in our 0405 plan. In 0304, from a utilization standpoint, we were actually under in two areas. Skilled operatives, which is what I consider more of warehouse workers, and technical workers. In this year's plan, we actually exceeded the underutilization for the warehouse workers and the skilled operatives. We had the same problem with technicians again back in 03, but we have actively hired and met or exceeded the number for the skilled operatives number. Applicant flow, again, a lot of that had to do with that was when we opened our new call center. So we were actually, I think we hired close to 400 call center representatives over a period of time. From a termination standpoint, there's a note on here. We had a couple of, in the beginning of 03, some one department downsizing, and it reflected in one class terminations weighing over another, and that was just a function of that department. It had nothing to do with that whole department was gone, so it wasn't any type of an arbitrary downsizing. From a promotion standpoint, again, the majority of the promotions that we had were the self-promotion through. The majority of our employees are the technical and the call center workers, so the majority comes from those self-promoting up as they gain new skills and new experiences as well. Community outreach, again, we had 300 volunteers in the CARES Day. We've upped that to 400, so we've really kind of taken as a challenge to increase our own employees and their families and things, so we've done a real good job with that. The reason that there was more schools, again, listed in here is because it included the Grass Valley Yuba City area, so locally we've actually increased the number of sites. In-kind cash and in-kind donations went up from about $340,000. 2 years ago, the vendor utilization was actually quite a bit higher. It was $7.8 million, and the reason for the difference is that was when we built the call center. So a lot of the furniture, a lot of the functions that went into one-time purchases for building the call center are reflected in that number. So it's not a function of using those vendors less. It's just a function of a one-time purchase. So, any questions about 0304?
Any questions on 0304 report? Okay. No other questions? Anything else you want to add then?
No, I guess that's it until August when we go through the...
Yeah.
Rich? Yeah.
Chairman, to Larry and Comcast, thank you. I would recommend that you receive and file, refer to staff, and then Ken Fleming, who's in the audience, who's the city's affirmative action officer, is and has been our policy analyst and number cruncher on this. He'll respond back through staff to you with any recommendations he may or may not have for Comcast.
Okay.
No, thanks for the opportunity to show off the work done.
Thank you for your presentation, for your very good summary, and you had the easy part today, huh?
He was here to answer the tough questions.
Okay. All right. We'll be back in August then. So, okay. With that, then we can receive and file. And do we need a motion to do such, or just?
That's fine.
Okay. We'll receive and file. Refer to staff, and we'll have Ken's report and the commission staff report. We'll see you folks back in August. So.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
All right. If nothing else on that item, then we'll call the next item, please.
We have the 2005-2006 fiscal year Cable Commission budget.
Okay. Mr. Fossa.
Mr. Chairman, members, good afternoon. It's the exciting annual budget presentation. Let me review highlights first. Revenues to the Commission are flat year to year. There has been essentially a flat revenue to the Commission for the last 5 years, at least in percentage terms. This year it's almost exactly flat. The reason being that satellite competition in the marketplace, and again recall that satellite competition for video service does not provide a franchise fee. The franchise fee paid to this body is a result of use of the right-of-way by the cable companies. Satellite competition is approaching 27 to 30% now in this market, and this has triggered, despite rate increases by the cable operators, a flat revenue stream. So revenues are flat. Expenditures on our side, when you look at the line items, overall are very flat as well. In fact, some of the numbers, or most of the numbers, and Diane has done a great job in putting all the pieces together, are the same as last year's. There are small offsets between line items that pretty much wash. There's two issues to speak to. One is the auditor noted, and the audit report of the commission for several years is included in your staff report. The auditor noted in note 9 that we have a unfunded PERS liability. This phenomenon is fairly common now throughout local governments, in part because PERS changed their investment return for the long term by 0.5%. So there's a $176,000 and change unfunded PERS liability, and I'm recommending that we liquidate that liability with a one-time payment this year. My thinking is that we've begun a process to look at the commission sunset. Recall that the ordinance sunsets the commission in December of '07. Deferring this liability, one will make it larger next year based on the numbers I've seen from PERS. So it will increase because of interest and non-payment. And it puts us possibly having to deal with that, and maybe with the sunset at a more difficult time next year. So I think it saves us money in the long term and completely eliminates the possibility for this $176,000 of it having to be allocated to the commission's parents should you and the parental entities decide to let the sunset occur as currently enacted. Second, I talked with the chair, and the budget includes a $150,000 reserve for augmentation for community programming. And I believe many of you have talked with members of the community programming community over the last several days. This $150,000 was arrived at in a discussion with the chair as a starting point to consider augmentations to the community programmers in two regards. One, it's been several years since there's been any augmentations, any operational considerations. And two, in looking ahead out the 18 months to this possible sunset, it made sense to me that any needed capital improvements to bring production equipment and other operational activities to an effective level where they might be able to sustain themselves, should that be the event, was good business to look at now. So there was no science or rationale to the $150,000. It looked to me that my recommendation for the $150,000 for community programming augmentation and the $176,000 recommendation to clear the PERS liability was about a 5% reduction in the revenue distribution to the county and the cities. Recall for any of the new members, the flow to the commission is about $8 million in round numbers of revenue. You take from that, you operate the commission staff, and the budget describes the four primary functions of the commission staff, and you're looking at us, there's essentially three of us, or three full-time positions. It also takes care of the litigation that we're actively involved in with Comcast. Second level is you allocate each year an amount of money to the community programming grantees, and that is about 1.2 million in round numbers, including Metro. And the balance is distributed to the county and the cities based on the best numbers we have available, and Diane gets those from the Department of Finance with their annual updates. That is the percentage on a per capita basis back to the general fund of each of the jurisdictions. So the budget shows you what the net cost is to your jurisdictions for your decisions that you may or may not make today. I'll comment next in the overview, and then we can, and staff can take questions if you have them. Metro 14 is a hybrid. Metro 14 is a community programming element, but it is also your element. So sometimes in the budget presentation, we'll talk about community programming in total, and then sometimes we'll talk about allocations of channels and dollars to the community programming licensees or grantees. Metro Cable 14 exists on a memorandum of understanding of all the jurisdictions, and as you know, it's the way that the local government meetings of your jurisdictions and every other local government that wishes to be cablecast are cablecast and now webcast throughout the county. Metro 14's allocation in the overall community programming pot has been around $300,000. And over the years, we've set aside funds within that allocation for equipment upgrades and mostly equipment upgrades. But recently, we've used some of that reserve that we've created for operational expenses. Two things for you. One, we've completed all the equipment upgrades. There are POs out now. There's some new upgraded servers in place. We're in the process of putting compatible DVDs in each of the jurisdictions so that when we make copies for the clerks or they make copies for you or for the public, we have the same equipment in every place. That way our training things go easier. We're pretty well settled down. The counties work with us on webcasting. We're okay. But starting next year, it looks like the reserve will be gone, and because of the new cities, Rancho, Citrus, and everybody that's come into play, the operating budget for Metro is now at the line. So next year you can expect to see a need for additional operating funds on the Metro cable side to continue covering all these new things that are going on. The budget went out about 2.5 weeks or so ago. Some of you have approached me with questions. I've tried to address those via phone or email when you've had questions. The format is traditional. The bottom line is there's 2 recommendations for expenditures that differ from last year's base. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Rich, just quickly as you're going through this, the numbers that reflect in this request for augmentation in the grantees, but as you mentioned Metro 14, you said not this year but next year would require. Do you have any idea what that number, and again it may be helpful for today's discussion, we're talking about this year's budget, but I know as we look at the 2007 is the year of the sunset and look at capital needs as well as programming requests or additional support for programming, I'm just curious what would the general number be for if you have any ballpark on Metro Cable 14?
We're looking to have some offsets as each of your jurisdictions improve the control centers at the different cities. And we'll talk later about what's happening in Citrus and what's happening in Folsom. So there's some offsets. Current allocation is $283. My guess is we might go $315.
Okay, so you're looking somewhere $35,000 to $40,000. Again, that's your best.
It's looking like 10%, best guess now.
Okay, that's helpful. Again, not knowing it, just as we're looking at numbers here. I do just want to add to, I think Rich summarized it very accurately, that when we were looking at first a May meeting and then obviously coming forward this meeting, that I suggested he at least have a set-aside number, and recognizing that would be a starting point. This commission obviously has fully in its discretion to go more than or less than, and I think in the last couple of years we actually have been at a less than number, but that I felt it was appropriate that we have that, and there is a chart that Rich has prepared based upon questions and inquiries I've received from at least a couple of commissioners about more information if we should go to a bigger number, what that would mean to the parental entities. And so that information, you had it at our desk, I think it's item 2, I think it's sitting there, so if that gives you an idea. Both of the requests have come in based upon the set-aside number, designated number within the proposed budget, and then the requests have come in subsequent to that, what those numbers would be, and we can get in that discussion certainly as commission desires. But
I'd be happy to take operational questions relative to the commission, to administration, and then I recommend that you hear from the community programming speakers and make their discussion.
One question before you turn to commissioners. The number for the PERS catch-up, is that a one-time, or is that going to be plugged in the budget every year, the $176,000? Is that going to be an annual number, or is that a one-time catch-up with some additional amount annually, or do you know?
I can't answer because we don't have the latest actuarial analysis. This was last year's analysis that we received in November from PERS. The upgraded analysis is tied to PERS investment performance that they project forward. So I don't know if there will be a shortage next year or not. The stock market appears to be doing better in that regard, but the key part is that PERS assumes that the unfunded liability will be repaid over 10 or more years with the sunset outstanding. That's why we're bringing it into place. If investment performance changed next year, it would have to change extremely dramatically, like the bubble of the late 90s, to offset this, and they're the experts. Their projections don't show that.
Okay. Would that answer, the last question I would ask you for this point in time would be, as it relates to the sunset and discussions this commission is going to have to engage in, because it certainly relates to some of the budget recommendations you're making. I think it may relate to some of the discussion we have here this afternoon regarding this year's proposed budget and what we choose to do, and looking forward to next year. What sort of time frame do you have in mind for actually getting discussion to the commission level for how we're going to proceed, obviously, with the parental entities, and certainly a discussion in this forum?
Good question. To recap what we talked about, I think at the meeting before last, prepared a draft presentation. What will go to the last piece of the draft is your budget decisions today. I'll then circulate it all to you for comments, feedback, and then would like to proceed with each of you to meet with the city manager or county executive in each of the jurisdictions to explain at the staff level, but with your assistance, the commission sunset and all the issues that are there, and then with their permission schedule a presentation to the cities and the county. This set to occur starting in 2 weeks and work through the summer, asking them for a response back, a sense of the jurisdictions and what they would like to do in the October-November range. Staff it in November, December, come back to you in the first part of the year for this board to assess, assimilate what has come back from the jurisdictions, and then for you then to make a recommendation back, a consensus recommendation back to your jurisdictions with a final decision October '06.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. All right, let me turn to commissioners and see if any questions here in the proposed budget. Anything to say?
Question.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Shelby.
I got about 4 questions, and I've been sick for a week with a sinus infection, so.
Otherwise, it'd be 8 then, huh?
We have such a small staff. What is the total unfunded mandate to PERS for us?
176,700.
That's the total?
That's the total from the audit that the auditor identified.
So this payment brings us current?
Everything that we know now, that's correct.
I think Don asked a question earlier about the cost, and I assumed it sounded like there were some other costs we had to pay.
It's a one-time. This is a one-time charge to do away with the unfunded liability that we know of as of now. It's always possible for PERS to come back and say, we've redone our actuarials again, and there's an additional payment that's due, but we're not aware that they're going to do that, or that that would happen. So this should bring the commission current, so they would have no unfunded liability to PERS for the employees that they have now.
Okay. The other question was, in the Metro budget, it talked about assisting the other city staffs in various projects and the cost of doing that. I checked with my city manager, and he was indicating that we hired a consultant out of the monies that we received for our cable commission funds, and we actually, according to them, we needed very little technical assistance from the Metro staff.
I could pull the numbers, but I think Metro staff has spent a considerable amount of time advising your consultant. Some of the consultant equipment picks had to be changed, and that was based on input from us.
Yeah, he was sending us several questions that had to be answered, but this is what his report back to me was. It really, we hired a consultant to do it, and he designed it. And
I'll bring it up now. I was going to talk about it under staff status, but it isn't just Citrus, but it's Folsom, Fire, Schools, Sacramento City Council chambers. So there's a lot of coordination and standardization. Citrus so far is, I think, the only venue that chose to go with an equipment package that was not fully compatible. And there were some issues of reconciling some operational efficiency things. The server back here works best with certain things that it's used to. And there have been, to my understanding, a fair amount of discussion, and especially our involvement in getting the Comcast fiber to your location so you could go live.
I knew that was a challenge early on. Because we're prepared in Citrus Heights if we have to hire our own person to manage the meetings. I think we're prepared to do that out of our own cable money. And we had that discussion today. The $150,000, the one-time allocation for equipment for franchisees, How did the 150,000 come about?
It was just a plug number. We talked about, what a percentage. Again, it was not based on anything scientific. It was, again, because we had zero allocated in the previous 2 years, and because I heard from commissioners anecdotally and directly that we wanted to see, again, not knowing about what needs might be out there. So again, it's not married to any particular consideration outside. I think that Rich had mentioned that if you took a 5% reduction, taking the PERS one-time contribution and using 150 as a number, that would be overall 5% reduction to the parental entities. But it could be more.
We could have plugged in 400,000.
Exactly.
Okay.
Very well. Could put in $1 million. I think you would have reacted pretty strongly if I had suggested that. So again, it was a starting point, and that's all. That's all it is, Mr. Shelby.
Okay. As it relates to the sunset, do we intend to appoint a committee of this board to work on the sunset to look at what would be our requirements? Do we in talking to the city so that we would know, do we need to hire a consultant to continue it? We have trouble now getting a quorum to have a meeting. We don't seem to have a big agenda. And so basically, I'm suggesting that we appoint a committee of the board to work with staff in the implementation so we have a full understanding of what does this mean when the sunset happens.
Mr. Shelby, at a meeting a couple of months ago, we presented a process. That was not one of the things that we came back with to work on. But to summarize, the thought was to assess from the parental jurisdictions their knowledge, first off to educate them that there was a sunset provision forthcoming, to educate them about what the commission does and other factors that they would want to consider. I mentioned that there is a critical factor of hearing what the jurisdictions want to say. So the process is to write that up, put it in a report, which you will all see, go with the representatives from the Cable Commission back to your respective jurisdictions, meet with city and county staff first and say, here are the facts, here are the figures, and ask them to study it and then ask for their cooperation to take that to the board. In your case, it would go to City Council. And I envision the presentation to City Council to be one where staff would be essentially supporting you. It's you reporting back from this board to your parent board on here are the pros and cons. And then to take 2 or 3 months, which would be later this year into the fall, on what your recommendation would be, yours meaning your Citrus Heights recommendation would be. Bring it back here, we'll staff it, let this body come up with a consensus recommendation or recommendations, alternatives, formalize those, and then take those back to the jurisdictions. Right now, I think the problem is probably one that the jurisdictions don't know that the sunset exists. It's one line tucked away in the ordinance, and the jurisdictions need to be educated on what's going on. There's a lawsuit pending against Comcast. There's the issue. There clearly is the issue of in a commission sunset mode, what the alternatives might be to continue supporting community programming. Likewise with Metro Cable 13. Pose those questions, get feedback, and put it together. If you'd like to do that with a subcommittee or something, that's always fine. But it was my intention that sometime the next 2 weeks to take the presentation that is intended to go to the management staff, circulate it to all of you, and get your comments back, and then move forward. With Mr. Moore and Mr. McGarvey's not here, but I thought the best place to start would be with Rancho Cordova. They're the newest city, and my guess is even with Mr. McGarvey's constant communication, probably the city with the least knowledge about the Cable Commission activities. Start there and test the process, and then schedule throughout the summer presentations through all the parents.
Okay. There was one last question. Could you, part of the report, tell us what does other similar sized jurisdictions that have cable commissions, how do they run their entities?
There is a gamut. There are, I believe, 1 or 2 other similar size that have cable commissions such as ours with a separate staff, but they are few. There are more likely alliances among jurisdictions that come together for the purpose of negotiating and or for the purpose of regulatory activity. But the jurisdictions act individually, so there's an alignment. The majority, however, of jurisdictions in the country are individual jurisdictions. So your city would do its own cable, and your city would do its own cable. That's by far and large the majority.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Shelby. And I think that as
There was one more. I knew
Okay,
there was one more.
good.
In the allocations, the Metro cable, is that part of this operations?
Metro Cable 14 exists under a memorandum of understanding by all of the parents that's actually tied into the ordinance. So it exists on essentially a handshake under the philosophy that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, that the consolidated staffing, the consolidated equipment can most efficiently operate the government channel. Some of the factors you have to consider are that if the Cable Commission were to dissolve, the franchise doesn't change. The contract with the cable companies doesn't change. So unless you made the choice to open negotiations with the cable companies, and I'm not sure you'd want to do that, there's still only one government channel allocated right now among the 7. So you have to come together on how to manage that. So in 1982-83, the decision was we would do the government channel on a consolidated basis. It continues to the day.
So entities like Sac County Fire, as big as they are, don't have to provide any funding for what they're receiving? Is this part of the
I'm not sure I understand your question, sir.
You mentioned earlier that we were working with Metro Fire
Yes.
broadcasting. Do they get that free?
No. Your policies contained in the budget are that the parental entities are cablecast by your allocation of $283,000, and that is a priority, that all the government entities that make up the commission have first priority. The next level is that any meeting held in this chamber or in the city council chambers where there's a live feed, we provide that service to the community. All others reimburse us on a direct cost basis for our services. So I made a presentation to Metro Fire last week. Sometime in the next 60 days, they'll come up as for replay on Metro Cable 14, and once every 6 months, they get a bill from us for their services, as does RT, as does SMUD, and I could go down the whole.
And where is that's in the budget? We received those too?
Yes.
Okay.
We're back to the statement of policies. Before the allocation got a little tight, we used to have a policy that said any outside entity, park district, another school district that desired to be cablecast, we would do the first kind of taster at our cost. We would go in and do the technical assessment and cablecast one of their meetings on our nickel. And we started to back away from that now just because of the setup and the operational costs. But if you look at in the budget on what page it is on under Metro Cable, you'll see the programming priorities and a fair amount of operational detail about Channel 14. I'm on page 4. Gavel to gavel coverage of all official meetings of the Commission's jurisdictions, official meetings held in these chambers, and on down the list. Our third priority is election forums, and we work our way on down. Those policies have been pretty consistent over the years with the marketing tool that we used a few years ago to try and get more government entities on the channel. We're rapidly reaching the point where 14 is full. There's 25 to 30 new hours of meetings, each week. Mr. Waters pushed hard, and we worked with the city did more work probably than we did, but we have a bidirectional feed now for the Port Authority. When the port meets in West Sac, it's on the cable system here. When the port meets on this side of the river, we feed it back over there. And only you can talk about the acknowledgement by the public of what that means or doesn't mean. It's been my experience that most feedback about cable casting and government meetings goes directly to you. Some people corner me when they see me at Albertsons, but most of the time it's you that say, so-and-so saw the port meeting, or so-and-so saw this meeting or that meeting, and that's where the feedback comes from.
We do have our fans.
We do. The point being that we've tried to get as many government entities on as possible. One of the things we've done quietly, and I'm moving on here in the budget presentation, but one of the capabilities we've done in working with Comcast is we've installed some equipment at the new Comcast head end, and we have the technical ability now to bring into 14 many other jurisdictions, and vice versa. We have the ability now through Comcast to move our signal out. So there's a potential that I mentioned this to you once before as a tease, but to make Metro 14 truly a regional government channel and have reach going down into the valley and north as well. So we take pretty seriously bringing local government closer to the people.
I'd like to announce, too, that we will go live on July the 8th.
Okay, very good. So you got gavel to gavel around the clock with little or no advertising, so that's a pretty good bargain. But to your suggestion, Commissioner Shelby, about committee or subcommittee, it may be that if we've done the initial rounds of meetings with the parental jurisdictions, we ought to visit that in the fall when you come back, Rich, and then if there's, if it looks like it's going to be, I trust it's going to be a good deal of work, no matter what the charge is, that may be the appropriate time then, if you're in concurrence, to look at the committee structure to help do some of that work at the commission level. So
clearly, if there's a jurisdiction or two that appears to want to have the sunset go through, and or maybe they all do, there are some very practical realities on how to do that, and the subcommittee at that time probably makes sense.
Okay, very good. Okay, let me continue. Any other questions down on the side here? Yeah, Mr. Lear.
Hey, Rich. You've mentioned the budget being flat for the last couple of years, and that reflects here in your report. But I'm really trying to understand that you've mentioned also that there's 30%, or roughly 30% now, the satellite is taken away from the cable. With this substantial growth that I think everybody here sitting at the table is experiencing, I'm questioning where's that difference? If you've got roughly 70% going back to the Cable Commission, and with the growth that we have, I'm just missing where are the revenues going then? Can you answer that?
I did a memo to you, I think, the first week in November and kind of walked through this. The growth in the county is maybe 4 or 5%. A good portion of the growth is in the battlefield now for cable television services. And satellite is picking up probably half of that, of the new growth. It varies by subdivision. I can pull that memo back for you and resurrect it. But in the overall marketplace in Sacramento, first we have a relatively low cable penetration as urban areas go. The market research shows that Sacramentans have other uses for their discretionary time. In the fall, you get to rake leaves, and in the summer you might be outside. Two, we have very good off-air reception, especially in your community. The Walnut Grove towers provide digital signals now, and many people are getting quality television with the equivalent of digital rabbit ears. You've got cable penetration at 55%, maybe a little higher than that. Satellite at 25, maybe a little bit higher than that. And you've got 20% or so who are happy with what they've got. The satellite piece didn't exist 5 years ago, and that's what accounts for the shift. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, but I think that as we move along, I mean, from one year to the next, now I'm still questioning. I mean, I see Elk Grove at 10+% growth, and again, I know that Folsom and some of the other cities, Rancho Cordova, and you're saying 10%, or you're saying 4 to 5% in the county. I don't know if that's accurate numbers, but I just don't see. I mean, I'm just thinking just as Elk Grove as an example, we had almost another 4,000 or 5,000 permits pulled last year in just our city alone. So I'm just I just question being flat from one year to the next. I'm having a hard time understanding. I understand what you've said, but again,
as satellite picks up more customers, that's $50 a month coming out of the.
Well, that's only if there is no growth and you have satellite coming on board and taking away from what you currently have. But
which is exactly what's happening.
But my suggestion to you, though, is that we're having, again, substantial growth throughout the region, and so they can take a portion away from what the new growth is, but you're saying on top of that, they're also taking away from what currently exists. Is that what you're telling me?
To the best of my my knowledge from market research, when an existing cable customer calls to say they're switching to satellite, 60% do. So that's a stat that helps. So that the market forces, right now, the roughly equivalent cable service is about $50, $52. The roughly equivalent satellite service is about $36 to $38. And the marketplace is making these changes. It started to level off. The satellite growth had been huge. It's starting to flatten now. But I would assert that the cable industry, and I know this from the activity in the Capitol, the cable industry is losing market share like it has never lost before because of satellite, and that is from their existing base. And I'll run the numbers for you, but the new growth is not enough to offset the existing base that are switching to satellite services.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Leary. All right. Any other questions? If not, then
Just
Mr. Waters.
on that point that Mike made, so is it your opinion or not that as we grow at the 10% rate, say the whole area, that these statistics would hold fairly good? X amount of new residents would go for cable and X amount of that 10% growth would go for satellite?
Right. The dramatic changes where cable ramped up in the late 90s and the first couple of years where we saw 12, 14, 18% increases in revenues to this body are over. And the dramatic decline where we've seen things drop now overall in the 10% range, I believe are over as well. What I see going forward are very small changes in revenue to the commission over time. I think the marketplace is starting to stabilize. The bigger concern is the one having to do with legislation and the proposals in Washington and here that could conceivably eliminate the cable television franchising process overall. But to your question, Mr. Waters, I see revenues, we're looking at $8 million per year. I would be very surprised to see another 14% increase like we saw 5 years ago.
From Comcast, yeah.
From
okay.
the cable companies in general.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Mr. Klaus.
Yes, I have a couple questions. One is you referred to a November memo. Some of us are more recent to the Cable Commission than that, so it'd be helpful to
I will update that. I
that.
provided you an email of an assessment of the marketplace, and I'll update it and redistribute.
Thank you. And then to the point of cable penetration of the market, is another factor in that television over telephone lines as well?
It soon will be. There was legislation pending in the Capitol to make it easier for the telephone companies to get into the cable market. That legislation is stalled out as of now. There's a relatively small working group trying to resurrect that legislation. I was invited to be part of it. So right now there is a relatively cumbersome process for telephone companies to get in the marketplace. That looks to change either at the state level or at the federal level fairly soon. The bottom line will be, however, it's doubtful, in my opinion, that the overall number of homes taking cable service will increase. We are likely to see shifts. Story in today's paper on the broadband side that SBC dropped their broadband rates to $15. Okay. That may bring in this case, it may bring a considerable number of new people to the broadband marketplace. The cable side, with the rates where they are in the $40 to $50 range, will probably have people switch between companies and providers if the bundle saves you money. If I can get from a telephone company voice and telephone services, video, cable television, my internet service, and probably my cell phone service from one company, and that's 20% less than the other, I might switch. But the revenue to this entity probably won't change because we have one entity paying a 5% franchise fee and the customer switches over to this one. Bottom line, I don't see a big change in revenues under the current model.
Okay, and I had another question too. This handout that says community programming 2005-06 fiscal year, I'm having trouble matching up the numbers on that, the augmentations on that, with the $150,000 that's proposed in the budget.
They don't match.
Okay, they're not supposed
No,
to.
for budget building, 150,000 was a plug number.
Okay.
Once that was
So-
in there, people gave what they would like to.
So these are requests?
Right.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And we have a supplemental, the other sheet though, would show if you actually looked at the request, and then it's the other item 2. It says channel licensee allocation. Rich prepared that,
Right.
And it shows if you were to increase that amount in, I guess, the increments of 200,000, 300,000, or 435,000, it shows based upon what was known as of the community programming list you just referred to. That would show what the breakdown would be then if we use that number for our adopting a budget. So it's a fair question, the same one that Mr. Shelby kind of asked too. Is so you have that information, so we have the ability, as fully within discretion of the commission, to.
Right, I understand that. I was just trying
it
to understand
doesn't
where these numbers came from.
Doesn't match. Okay, Rich, and I guess we've got a number of speakers, and if there's no other questions, that this information that was just referred to, Mr. McGlashan's question, is background for, I think, what we're going to hear from community programmers. So you've prepared this, and I would assume would be able to address this after we've heard from speakers, and then commissioners want to ask about how we would put together a budget, what impacts it would have if we made other choices. So, okay. All right, with that, we have 8 speakers. I would just say that if there's anyone else here who wants to speak on item 2, get your sign-up sheet in very quickly. Otherwise, we'll go through the 8 speakers, and then I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion then about the budget and items that have been either requested and or suggested. So, okay, we've got
3-minute on or not?
Yeah, and I'm going to put the 3-minute timer on again, so please, as much as possible, try to adhere to that so that we can, again, I want to allow sufficient time for deliberation by the commission. So with that, I'll call the first 3 to be Greg Lindner, Susan Damberger for Mike Lazar, and Carl Burke. So in that order.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Greg Lindner. I'm chair of SCCC this year. You have before you a couple handouts, one for BestNet, one for SCCC, that cover the requests that we're bringing for you today. What I'd like to say is we're not up here with our hands out, but actually asking for a helping hand to move along with BestNet. And that's what I'll start with and just highlight some of the items on that. We're requesting a $50,000 base grant from the Cable Commission to help support our operating budget on that. In addition to that, the membership is contributing $75,000 for fiscal year 2005-2006, and that'll help us move forward with BestNet funding some personnel licenses and some operational costs. In addition to that, we're asking for and requesting a one-time capital grant of $207,503, which will allow us to buy networking switches, which will help us manage the network. Right now we have 10 backbone sites connected. If we have a problem with one of them, it's very difficult for us to identify where the problem is, and it can sometimes take upwards of 2 to 3 days. With network management equipment in place, these switches, it'll allow us to immediately find where the issue is and resolve it much quicker. We have a number of different networks coming together from Comcast, SureWest, STI, and those switches will also help us make them all work together. So that's what that request is for. With the SEC budget, we're not asking for any augmentation there. We basically, we are increasing the budget this year, asking to in the amount of $114,000, but that is all coming out of contributions from the SEC members. So the base amount there for 266 from the last year is the same as it is for this year. So I respect your time and just open it up if you have any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, Greg, for the presentation, being concise. Let me ask Commission members any questions of Greg or SCCC about their requests and comments? Okay, good. Thanks,
thank
Greg.
you.
Stand by. Good. Okay, next, Susan, followed by Carl Burton, followed by Melissa Brown.
Hello, Chairman, Board, and members of the Commission. I'm Susan Damberger, and I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of Mike Lazar, President and General Manager of Capital Public Radio. Mr. Lazar sends his regrets. He's in Florida right now, but wanted me to express his gratitude for the generous grant from the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission. I'd like to quickly tell you the things that we're planning to do and how we'll actually use this money. Our 2 Sacramento stations include 88.9 KXJZ and 90.9 KXPR. Our average weekly listeners total 300,000.
We broadcast rarely heard music formats, classical music on 90.9 KXPR, and news programming, jazz and blues music on 88.9 KXJZ. We broadcast local talent such as the Capitol Jazz Project, the music of local guitarist Steve Holman, and local classical groups. We broadcast daily local news spots, stories, and features at the top and bottom of the hours during morning and afternoon drive times. We broadcast a locally hosted talk show 5 days a week, Insight. It's on at 2 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday. And in the last few weeks, we've discussed such topics as energy-efficient lighting systems and new lighting technologies. We've interviewed local opera singer Malcolm McKenzie. We've discussed legislation addressing interstate sales of wine over the internet and how this impacts California's vintners and wine connoisseurs. We've interviewed Executive Director of the Sacramento Jazz Jubilee, Roger Crum. We've aired discussions about the ethics of abortion, the death penalty, and assisted suicide. We broadcast 2 local blues shows for the arts hosted by Mick Martin and Derek Washington, as well as live events such as the Jazz Jubilee, the Festival of New American Music at Sac State, and the Jazz Series at Old Sacramento. We broadcast arts features hosted by Jeff Hudson, Paul Connolly, and Michael Frost, with previews of reviews of the Sacramento theater productions. In partnership with the California Lecture Series, we broadcast some of their events. For instance, poet and philosopher Wendell Berry, poet and author Naomi Shihab, and Chinese-American writer Maxine Hong Kingston. We broadcast 52 weeks of Friday night opera hosted by Sean Bianco, who is a Sacramento musician and choir director. Mr. Lazar would like to sincerely thank the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission for your support in helping us to serve the Sacramento community. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Any asking questions of Susan? If not, thank you for your presentation. Very good. Thanks. Okay, so next, Carl Burton, Melissa Brown, and Francis Grace Child. Good afternoon, Carl.
Thank you, Chairman and Cable Commissioners, for allowing me to be here today. I want to remind you that each and one of you have a packet of our programming and our budget for the next year, and we're requesting an annual $420,000 budget, and in addition to that, we're asking for $66,500 for replacement of worn-out equipment, and we're also requesting $43,500 for hometown video that will allow us to go out into your communities and film events that you want to be aired in your respective communities. I also want to remind you that in the last couple of years, we've taken a 35% hit in our budget, and I would appreciate your support. I want to thank all of you that were able to come down to our public access station and take a tour there. I invite the rest of you to come down and take a tour at any time. And any questions, feel free to ask me. One other thing, Rich, I want to point out to you that in regards to going out there and talking to people in the community, there are a lot of people that have gone to cable that are switching back to cable. I mean, they've gone to satellite and are switching back to cable. And the reason why is like a fellow that I had lunch with today said, "Hey, Carl, can you tell me where I can get my cable bill, my telephone bill, and my internet all connected, where it just comes in one bill?" And there's a lot of switching backwards and forwards right now. And I think a lot of people that are going to satellite are also ditching it and going back to cable. I know personally from my own personal experience I did, and other people around in my neighborhood have. Thank you again.
Thanks,
Is there any
Carl.
questions?
Okay, any questions of Carl?
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Carl. Okay, Melissa Brown. Good afternoon, Melissa.
Good afternoon. Chairperson Natoli and members of the board, my name is Melissa Brown. I'm Assistant Superintendent, Sacramento City Unified School District, and we're here to support Access Sacramento request for replacement of their outmoded equipment and upgrading it. We work together with Sacramento and the Access Sacramento in order to produce a television show for parents. We've done that for the last 4 years. We produce 52 weeks worth of programming. It comes on Saturdays at 9 p.m. And basically what we do is produce a half-hour television show which includes parenting tips. It allows us to do 3 major things for youth and our school district members as well as our parents in the community of Sacramento. First, it allows us to reach a broader market, up to 250,000 Secondly, it's a regular parenting show where parents get the tools and the equipment and kind of connections that they need in our community in order to do better things. And thirdly, it helps us train our students because we train our ROP students to do camera work and community production through this Parent Haven television show. The name of the show is Parent Haven. We'd like to just share 30 seconds with you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
It's on the screen.
Here it comes.
Today's parents are busier than ever. They have to balance the demands of their family and their career. Did you know that 81% of today's parents don't know where to turn for help with parenting? But today in Sacramento, there is an answer. It's called Parent Haven. Parent Haven is a weekly half-hour television show just for parents. It will help you get the tools you need to help your children improve their success at home and at school. It will also help you learn better parenting skills. Tune into the exciting world of Parent Haven every week on this station.
Let's rerun that so we get the whole audio and
What
video,
did it go?
please, if the control room can do that. Our two sons.
I want to see you dancing to the music at the end.
Oh, no.
Today's parents are busier than ever. They have to balance the demands of their family and their career. Did you know that 81% of today's parents don't know where to turn for help with parenting? But today in Sacramento, there is an answer. It's called Parent Haven. Parent Haven is a weekly half-hour television show just for parents. It will help you get the tools you need to help your children improve their success at home and at school. It will also help you learn better parenting skills. Tune into the exciting world of Parent Haven every week on this station.
Thank you. Many of our community residents tell us that the show has helped them make important decisions about learning different techniques and tools, and we are able to offer a venue to not only our community partners, but others who work with us on a regular basis to improve our conditions for our youth and to reduce violence, drug and alcohol use by informing the parents. We want to thank you for the support in the past and thank the Cable Commission, and we appreciate your continued support of Access Sacramento.
Great. Thank you, Melissa, for your presentation. Thanks to the control room for running that a couple times for us. Okay, we can bring the lights up, and next we have Frances Gracechild. She's coming right down, and then we have...
My favorite part.
All right.
Lower this.
Get there, lower? The button right there.
Touch screen to act. Well,
Yeah.
no,
Okay,
am I
there.
doing the wrong one?
There
There we
you
go.
got it.
Thanks, Ron.
And then following Frances will be Don Deason and Gary Martin. So, good afternoon, Frances.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. Thank you for letting me be here, and thank you, Ron, for all you've done over the years, your leadership with Sacramento Access. I represent today members of the nonprofit organization community that provide human services to Sacramento County, and being able to do programming through Sacramento Access, it really expands our little budgets. You know, many of us have budgets under $1 million a year. They're very small budgets. And the chance to be able to do local programming to bring our services to as many people in this area as possible is an incredible service. Our history with Sacramento Access began from the very inception. I was with Ron. I served on the original board of directors. Then when I was, as a volunteer in the community, president of the Visual and Performing Arts Center for Sacramento High School, many times I would go to the studio with our children at Sac High and watch their programs be filmed, and they enjoyed so much seeing that on television. And then most recently, RIL has been participating in the live wire productions. Those are no-cost chances for us to advertise events and programs that we're scheduling at RIL. And then I can't remember the date exactly. Maybe Ron would be better as the historian, but RIL received the Best Program Award for our Gift to Sacramento production of our Transitional Living Center. And I believe that was the year you won Best Local Cable Programmer. So we like to... 10 years ago, we like to think that our best program prize helped win that, and so we just think that the executive leadership of Ron Cooper is the best available, and he has made our particular community, Resources for Independent Living and People with Disabilities, have complete and total access to all the services and programs, and we hope that you'll support the proposed budget that they have before you today. Okay. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Francis. Good seeing you again, too. Thank you for your comments. All right. Following Francis, then, is Dawn Deason. And Dawn will be followed by Gary Martin, followed by Joanne Fuller.
Thank you, Ron. He's the expert in this.
Push button. Good afternoon, Dawn.
Thank you very much, Chairman and board members, Commissioner. My name is Dawn Deason. I'm with Blood Source, which is the Sacramento Region Community Blood Center. Are you familiar with that?
I got stuck this morning.
Oh, congratulations. Well, I'm here to speak on behalf of nonprofit organizations, but I must tell you that I have 20 years of television experience. I just started with Blood Source, so I'm kind of new in this arena. But I can see lots of opportunity that can, thanks to Ron and Sacramento Access Cable, that Blood Source can do lots of wonderful programming, training, outreach, and hopefully public service announcements through using the cable access. But I do know that they are sort of behind the times when it comes to equipment. Digital is the new world, and unfortunately, Access Cable is somewhat limited in their digital equipment, whereas you in this chamber, I'm sure these cameras are using digital equipment. So it is the standard. Fortunately, it's a lot cheaper than the previous formats, and it's easier to maintain. But it would help bring cable access up to date and allow other nonprofit organizations such as Blood Source to come in and use the facilities not only for training, programming, outreach, but public service, whereas, our core budget does not allow for any kind of television production. It's very expensive, as we all know. So this is very, very valuable to the community, and I thank Ron and all of you for considering allowing us to buy some new equipment. That's all, unless you have questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, Don, for your comments. Any questions? If not, thanks for your good work. Thank you. Okay, it's Gary Martin, followed by Joanne Fuller, followed by Jan Tillman.
Thank you for the chance to talk with you. I've been working at Cosumnes River College the last 12 years as a department chair, and we have partnered for that entire time with Access Sacramento through both programming and training. And I want to talk briefly about the Hometown TV proposal of part of Access Sacramento. I have brought with me a short clip of previous Hometown Experience Access Sacramento programming, and if you don't mind, we might run that. It runs 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll do that, and if we can bring lights down, and our control room folks will get that on there.
And the winner is H2O use. Accepting the award is Mary Ann Dickinson and Beth Ernsberger. Okay, you all know the words. Here we go.
Are the candidates for Assembly District 9. I will point you out one by one. At the far end is Leslie Cochran, then Dave Jones, Lauren Hammond, Gail Morgan, Manny Hernandez, Gaspar Garcia, and Donna Begay. All the candidates who are in the primary and running were invited to be here. Unfortunately, not all of them could be here, and we're sorry about that. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does happen. There are conflicts. Here to ask questions of our panelists are, starting on my left, and wave please, Bud Ongst from the Oak Park community, Robert Harvey from AARP, Velma Sykes from the Sacramento Observer, and Jim Sanders from the Sacramento Bee. This forum is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters.
Skiing and snowboarding today. Drew Wyant looking to his right, but going back to his left, and back to his right now. No way is that caught. You're kidding me. Touchdown. Unbelievable.
On May 14th, 1948.
Many amazing events and cultural activities in our community that deserve to be on television that just don't get to be there without Access Sacramento. That partnership with Cosumnes River College means that many of the crew positions that allowed these to be on television came from students who now intern or volunteer at Access Sacramento. The students that come from Cosumnes River College also participate at Metro Cable. Many of your meetings are run by former students. Many of the other programs that come from Smctc originate out of Cosumnes River College, both in terms of the broadcast classes as well as the SEVA Awards, the Student Educational Video Awards. All of the college awards that were awarded by Smctc this year went to Cosumnes River College. It's an amazing partnership. Those types of opportunities, though, only come about because of the funding that you provide. We partner with Access for Training. Their truck comes out to Cosumnes River College in order to allow our students to learn how to be on the road with production and to use the Access Sacramento truck. It is a wonderful partnership that we want to continue to do more with. We have staffed an additional 1/3 faculty member in the coming fall to help make additional sports programming available to the community. Because of the budgeting cuts a couple of years ago, the amount of sports programming was decreased. Capital City Game of the Week was canceled. We hope to bring at least some of that back with maybe a little more expansion. We will do some football, certainly, but as an educational opportunity, we hope to also do perhaps some cross-country, some water polo, men's soccer, as well as possibly even rowing out at Lake Natoma. So there's a variety of opportunities that will come about if we can continue this partnership, and I certainly hope that both on the equipment side and on the hometown television side, you'll support that opportunity. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate your comments.
Are we taking questions?
Yeah, if you want to, Gary.
I just have one question. Okay.
Thank you, Ann.
You left out of the list baseball, and coming out of Cosumnes, they won the Bay Valley Conference Championship.
We televised a Cosumnes River
She's got a
College.
special interest in the team.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Cosumnes River College and Sacramento City College
I go to those
game
games.
this last year. We also did some college basketball a couple of times for both men and women. So we do a lot, and yes, Cosumnes River College, of course, is close to us, which makes it easier. But yes, go Hawks! CRC Bay Valley champions in baseball this year. Coach Tony Bloomfield appreciates your support, Ms. Collins.
Okay. You did a good job.
Thanks, Gary. Okay. All right, Joanne Fuller. Joanne.
Wow, wow, wow. I'm Joanne Fuller. I'm here representing California Common Cause. Chair, honorable commissioners, thank you for this opportunity to support our local cable access station in their vital role providing coverage of local events and outlets for alternative views in our community. I appeared before you several months ago telling about Ron Cooper and cable access stations' help in generating a report that looks at our local television coverage by commercial broadcast television here and in what they did to support, thank you, my assistant here. So we don't have a video, we have the paper copy of the report. We looked at the television coverage here of educational presentations of issues in around the last November's campaign. The report evaluates how fairly and effectively local broadcast television stations used the public airwaves to educate voters about candidates and issues. And we found that local television stations profited from our democracy by running television commercials for candidates and ballot measures while spending only minutes covering the issues with locally produced educational programming. In spite of earning almost $12 million in 2004 political advertising revenues, local television stations did not produce needed programming to educate the voters. So this highlights the need for community education, discussion and awareness, and alternative programming which Access Sacramento provides in our county. Please continue your support and provide the additional funds requested for equipment replacement for Access Sacramento, and a special thanks for the participation and leadership of Ron Cooper in our effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Appreciate your comments. Any questions? Okay, good. Thank you. And Jan Tillman. Jan's the last speaker we had for this afternoon, so if there's anyone else that wish to speak, if not, then we'll bring it back to the commission when Jan concludes her comments. Good afternoon, Jan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jan Tillman, Vice President for Content at KBIE Channel 6 and 7. You're receiving just a brief one-page overview of our plan for the next fiscal year for the operation of Channel 7. We plan to continue to provide 24-hour-a-day programming service on 7. We also have secured a channel on the digital tier of Comcast, and we upconvert the Channel 7 programming content and also broadcast on the digital tier of Comcast Cable. In addition to that, we have a video-on-demand agreement with Comcast, and using our Channel 7 service and the fiber link that we have to the cable head end, we are providing content to Comcast, which they are placing on their servers that will be available as video on demand. Comcast is not quite up yet with their VOD service, but they are going to be at any time. And having the ability to provide that content and make it available to the community at any time on video on demand is a wonderful opportunity. We are placing on that service all of our locally produced programming, New Valley, Central Valley Chronicles, California Heartland, and a brand new series that we have just launched called Viewfinder. And I hope that you have an opportunity to see some of these programs. Subterranean Sacramento was actually the premiere program of the new Viewfinder series. It is very specifically a local series intended to represent this community. Last week we also broadcast a Viewfinder special program called Music of Hope, with Michael Newman and the Sacramento Youth Symphony. Last night, we did a program called Forgotten Youth. Jennifer Whitney actually hosted that program for us, and it addressed the issues of kids aging out of the foster care system and what we can do in our own community to address that issue. Those programs are going to become are not only available on Channel 7 and on the digital tier, but they are also going to be available on video on demand. In the next year, we also hope to inaugurate our K-12 programming service for BestNet. We continue to be very, very encouraged about the opportunities for BestNet providing exceptional service to this educational community. And as all of you know, I'm sure, we have this wonderful asset with PBS educational programming, and we're really looking forward to partnering with Smctc to enhance our presence there. In the past year, we launched a service called Teacher Line, and this is a very specific service that we have contracted with PBS for. It is a service that is designed for education for teachers. We are partnering with Smctc and SCOE on that project as well. In our budget that we submitted to you, it is flat. It is consistent with the current year operating budget, $175,000. We have also submitted a request for augmentation to assist with our capital needs. Our overall cost for digital transition is $5 million. We have been working on that for the past 3 years. In the coming fiscal year, KVIE's capital costs are budgeted at $985,000. You see listed here specific equipment items that relate to our Channel 7 operation. For several years, we have worked to integrate the operation for Channel 6 and Channel 7, and now also our digital services. We are actually just in the process of completing the master control infrastructure and hope to have that completed by the end of this calendar year. The total cost for those equipment items it's $270,000. We made a request for $68,000 from the Commission for augmentation for capital in this coming year. We have not, as you well know, received any capital equipment support from the Commission, I think, since the year that we went on the air with Channel 7. I want to thank you very much for the support that you have provided for us, and your support helps us to better serve this community. Okay. Any questions?
Thanks, Jan. Any questions of
No,
Jan?
I just wanted to make a comment because I did not have an opportunity to see the programs. I've heard a lot about the programs, and certainly I heard some of the audio when I was driving in my car radio, but I couldn't get home in time to see it. But the one on foster youth is so appreciated by the by our own department, DHS, because this is a real problem in this community with perhaps the rate of foster kids going into homelessness
Absolutely.
Immediately upon emancipation is about 40%. It's really high. So it was very hopeful, and the PBS program that led into it was also excellent. Heartbreaking, but excellent.
Heartbreaking, yes. You will have an opportunity to see the program again. That particular program will air this weekend on Channel 6, and it is on next week on Channel 7.
How about the subterranean one? Is that
Subterranean Sacramento will come to you again in September.
If no one knows what that is, you know, in terms of your audience, it's
Right.
Some of the best places to see it are probably the firehouse's parking lot yet, where you can actually see the structures.
Exactly. And Jack Gallagher takes you there in this program.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Jan, I think Ms. Sheedy, you have Sorry, Jan. Yeah.
Turn that on. I did see Aging Out.
Did you?
I stopped for just a moment to take a look at it. The next thing I knew, I sat down. It was very, very good, and I do hope that other people were able to see it because it was very educational, and it was a well-needed program. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you to all of our speakers and presenters today. Appreciate certainly the work that goes on throughout the course of the year and the reports on your base budgets, but also on some of the things you'd like to do with the requests that are before us. So with that, I'll bring it back to the commission. And I don't know, Rich, anything else you wanted to add? If not, then just here with the commission then to talk about what it is we'd like to do in light of the request. I just note that with the request that wasn't on this sheet because we didn't have it until Jan presented this afternoon, that we've got, if my math is right, $342,503 in one-time capital requests, and then the two requests for the augmentations for the programming for BestNet and Access Hometown. And then next year, we would just note, too, that we would likely, in what you said, Rich, have a roughly $30,000 plus or minus request for Metro Cable 14 under the base, but the capital is about $342,000, and the programming for this year is the $93,500. So, okay, with that, then, let's turn to commissioners. Let's start down to my right and see if there are any other questions, comments about budget, what you'd like to do, and go from there.
Sure, I'd be happy to start here. I guess first, thanks, Rich, for keeping us up to speed on what the impacts of these requests are, the spreadsheets that you got put here. And I guess my first comment is the impacts of the additional allocation stuff. I assume, based on what the chair just discussed here, that last column, the $435,000, if we accepted all these requests we've heard, that's the number, and those are the impacts on the parental distributions.
Within $1,000.
Okay. So,
Could you repeat that, because I'm looking at...
Okay, that's a different spreadsheet. If you
Different
could,
sheet item.
Yeah, make sure.
Okay, and this spreadsheet does or does not include KVIE?
It does.
Includes all of it.
Well,
It includes all of it and then takes out what was already in the proposed
yeah,
budget.
it's the last column there.
Okay,
the
great.
435,000 is the total of everything, and I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes. Okay.
And so I guess just to start off, thanks for everybody for their presentations. I think just from where I sit and I look at what these requests mean as far as these various entities' ability to do certain things, and I look at the impact to the city of Folsom specifically. I really can't rationalize a better way to leverage that amount of money for what it would do for our community, both from the BestNet Educational Consortium, the Access Sacramento, and the KVIE. So, and I'm sure we'll have varying opinions on this, but from my standpoint, I'm actually maybe in a giving mood here as far as what they're requesting, but I would be comfortable with the 435 for this year and anything in between. So I'll start out by being easy on this end, and again, I think a lot of these are. I just think it's a good way for us in our community to leverage what amounts to a relatively small amount of money to really have some neat things happen. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll move down the line here.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Morin. Again, Mr. Shelley.
I would second that. I think we all would give up a little pain for the community's benefit.
Okay, good. Mr. Leary.
Yeah, I too agree with what's happened here. I know that obviously some of these entities took some pretty significant hits in the last couple of years, so I think that this would go a long way to help support those entities that have lost some significant funding. But beyond that, I think that there's been, at least my feeling is there's been some question or concern about what we talked about, Rich, in the numbers of how the growth is going on in the community and the lack of funding, I guess, that I see coming back to this commission. And you've given, I think, an idea or perception of what you think it is, but I'd like to find out in a concrete way what exactly is going on in that respect. And so I don't know how that we can approach that or how we can do that, but
you'll have that in the next 48 hours.
Well,
I'll update if I heard your question correctly. The figures I gave you on market share in November and then I will bring to it the growth projections that SACOG is reporting for the region.
Okay.
And I'll allocate accordingly, and then I'll give you an estimate. I'll give you numbers on what I think the revenue growth will be going forward.
Okay. I think that that's extremely important to find out what is going on there, because again, I'm you're talking about the flat budget, but yet again, if everything was consistently flat, I'd be okay with what you've told me, but it's not. We're growing leaps and bounds in this region, and so I'm concerned in what the actual numbers are.
Again, the key aspect that satellite providers don't provide franchise fees.
I understand that. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Mr. Lurie. Okay, Mr. McCarty.
No comment, just a quick question. I think it's obvious that there's a need out there, and you add up the sum of all the requests far outpace the resources available. So are there, historically in this case, do you provide recommendations as far as which ones you think are more meritorious than others, or which ones have capacity and so forth, or is it just...
No, historically, the relationship between the community programming grantees is a one-to-one between your board and the grantees. Staff provides you, essentially passes through what was provided, but makes no recommendations.
Okay.
Anything else, Mr. McCarty?
No.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Cole.
I had a couple of clarifying questions, and I'm sorry I was late. But it says additional allocation, and it says base. And I understood that in the other column, even if you added KVIE's amount in, those are not base. That is one-time allocations. Isn't that correct? So we're not augmenting the base additionally. That's my understanding.
Ms. Collins, there's two types of requests.
I see that. I see the unsolicited base augmentation, which comes to $93,500.
That's correct.
That would build a base from which groups would think they could operate and build on for next year.
Let me explain the column heading. The request by SCCC and Access Sacramento is to increase their share of the 877 base allocation. So what they're asking for is effectively a permanent increase in their allocation by those amounts.
Oh, by the 877,000.
Yes, the 877,000 is your current allocation for community programming. That is effectively the base, the base number. You have a request now for $93,500 to add to that base.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
Okay, but that doesn't, I'm just trying to understand how you have it on item 2, because you're saying the additional allocation and it says base. Oh, I see, you're not going base across this way. You're going up and down?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so, and these other figures are what up on the top then? That's his additional allocation.
There are requests for one-time capital augmentation.
Yes, I understand that. You're just not trying to build those into the base.
That's
with
correct.
This chart. Okay, now I understand.
Unless you so direct.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it as one-time allocations and trying to understand this chart. Thank you.
5 years, 6 years.
And I'm very supportive, particularly of the equipment requests. I might have questions about the unsolicited base augmentation here, but not the other.
And I'm glad Isla brought that up, because I'm supportive of the additional funding for the equipment, but I'm not supportive of changing the base.
Yeah, the one that's in a column under item 2. Yeah, now, I had questions about that, and I didn't know whether the others were including it or not.
Okay, so here's some breakdown, some distinction there.
Just some understanding.
Yeah, that's important, because I heard some folks that they were supportive of both, others are supportive of equipment, and questions around the augmentation for what would be considered base or additional programming. That could be one time, although people begin to, so again.
Well, as I see, there's only 2 of them.
There's only 2 of them, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and so my questions will be simple when we get back.
Okay. All right.
Well, you can't work without the equipment being brought up to date. There's no question about that. So obviously we really should be looking towards augmenting that part of it with, with all that's been done for the community, at least looking at the equipment and taking care of that is something that I find at the top of the list. I also want some more information on the unsolicited base, but I do understand how everything has gone up in cost and labor and what have you. So I'll look at it with a very open mind when we come back to it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Don. I haven't checked with the rest of our colleagues, but I think Sandy and Kevin and I are here to represent the city of Sacramento. And if my math's right, if this $435,000, our share of loss, if you will, or what we thought was allocated to us would be $145,000, like Andy smokes something to about $21,000. Isn't that right, Andy, for your city?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, again, I think that I'm supportive of the new equipment and all the needs for the servers, so we can do this right, and that's we'll discuss the rest, I guess, a little later. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Ms. McClash.
Yes. Well, considering where these revenues come from, I think it's very appropriate that to allocate more back to the programmers to expand their ability to provide this service to the community. And I support the one-time capital augmentations that are requested. And I'm willing to consider the programming requests, but perhaps do that on an annual basis rather than building that into the base.
Okay. Good. All right, Schmidt.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is it on?
Yeah, he's here on. You go ahead.
Are you on? I'm not used to this. I'm very receptive to the capital improvements. I think based on the testimony of the executive director that we don't really know the future. It may make sense to make capital improvements at this time. I'm willing to discuss augmenting the base, but I think capital improvements are a sound investment.
Okay, good. Thanks, Art. Mr. Dickinson.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify something with respect to the numbers, because on this chart that Rich, you ran regarding what would happen to the distribution to the parents at certain levels, the indication has been that we're dealing at the $435,000 level with all the requests aggregated. But that does not take into account the $150,000 that had been plugged, as you said, for community programming, right?
No, the 435 would be the totality of all the requests on top of the 877.
So presuming that the 150 would apply to the 435, the net effect is 285.
No.
Why not?
The net effect of all the requests is 435,000.
You already built the other into the budget.
But it's not going to the parents. It's set aside. And under this scenario, I presume that the 150 would be part of the 435. You wouldn't. You're starting with 5.8 million, which is your recommendation in your staff report for the distribution to the parents, assuming the 150 is set aside. If you take 150 and you augment it to meet the requests made by the groups, the net effect is 285, not 435. Am I right?
The budget has the
yes,
reserve.
I believe you are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's, we just
Oh, no, that's okay.
No,
we just made $150,000.
No, I want to point this out because I want to point it out because while we're struggling over whether we give an additional $93,000 to SECC and KVIE, in fact, the discussion has proceeded around the dais. We just got that money back and more. That's what happened here. So,
in budget terms.
In budget terms.
By the way, that unsolicited base augmentation is Access and BestNet.
Right, SECC, BestNet. I mean, they're the ones who...
He's working out the base number.
They
I
quarterback.
thought you said KVIE, and I didn't see them under...
No, I'm sorry if I misspoke. It's Access and BestNet. I'm delighted to hear my colleagues agree that the capital augmentations are justified, and I heartily concur with that. Won't say another word. I think whether we call them one-time fundings or whether we put them in the base, I think the others, the Access and BestNet requests are equally meritorious. And we have several members of the commission who haven't been here for the full run of the conversations and decisions made with respect to the grantees, but that was alluded to in some of the testimony, but they have taken, at least in my opinion, far more than their fair share of reductions when revenues grew tighter and demands grew greater from the parents. Seems to me that not only is it appropriate, as Ms. McGlashan said, to return these revenues in a reasonable and appropriate way to grantees who, frankly, don't exist anywhere else. I mean, there's nothing else like them around here. There is no other access in this community that parallels what Access does, and there is no other BestNet. And we're the commission, by the way, who said that we wanted to pursue BestNet in the most serious way. There are people sitting on this commission who remember some very tough negotiations to try to make sure that our primary cable operator agreed to put into BestNet the way we felt that it ought to be pursued, which was in a frankly a first-class manner. And so those are things that we simply don't have otherwise, and we've made a previous commitment to that I think we should again recognize and honor. The fact is that we can do this with no great pain or suffering to the parents in relative terms, but it means a heck of a lot to the grantees. So I'd be perfectly comfortable, frankly, putting that 93.5 back into the base. But however it gets there, I think we ought to authorize the amount of the requests made this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dixon. I would just, again, thank everybody for their comments that would weigh in very quickly here. I support the one-time capital needs of replacement equipment. I agree that that's very, very important, and I think it will go a long way to assisting in providing broader opportunities for programming as well as accessing the various entities in community programming development. So support those. On the programming requests, I would just say that, again, I would not argue with putting them into the base. However, if we want to do it because of some potential uncertainty about budgets, and I think it's good questions today by members of the commission about what the projections are and so forth. We certainly could take that on an annualized amount, tie it to the particular program elements so that, again, it would be clear, it wouldn't become diluted down within the framework of the programming for those particular entities, and if it was the will of the board here to visit that annually. But either way, I would be comfortable with that amount. And I also would like to acknowledge that next year we'd likely have a request for Metro Cable 14 to, if we begin to look at the base, to adjust that by amount that I think was estimated today, potentially $30,000 to cover the programming efforts and needs out there for the parent entities. So at any rate, at this point, then, if there's any other comments, we'll Chair will entertain them. The motion.
I just wanted to get the other question answered.
I'm sorry, Ms. Combs. Yes.
Would this establish a base for BestNet itself as an entity?
The request from Smctc is to do exactly that.
Okay, because I know that they are bringing considerably money, much more money than this to match whatever we put in. So, I'm comfortable with giving them a base and the $50,000. I'm not as comfortable of building the 43.5 into the base of Access. The reason I say that is because Access already gets double the amount of the rest of them added together, all the other grantees. And so I hate to build it into the base. However, I'm looking at it as this seems to be a special programming request. They're covering one heck of a lot of different community events. So, perhaps if we tied it to something like that, but not build it into the base, I'd be a lot more comfortable. I'm not familiar with all of Metro Cable's needs, but I do know how stretched thin your staff is, Rich. They're trying to cover all the agencies. There are requests all the time for either planning commission coverage or other type, and especially special type meetings where everybody knows it's going to be a big issue, and so we simply can't respond to all of those. So I'd like to see how Metro Cable is going to handle making sure that everybody can get out to the assignments they need to get out to, and I know we're going to look at some remotes, but so I'm concerned about when that request will come in. And sorry I missed that discussion. I'll talk it over with you later. But
next year, he said.
Yeah, next year. But I'm comfortable with the one, so they establish a base, and I'd like to know what others think about that. I'm not comfortable automatically building this into a base.
Okay.
Given how much of the current allocation already goes to access.
Okay,
Well, I just want to talk about the 150 that we put into the budget. If we're going to have, I know that's a reserve, but if we're going to have something built into the budget, it should be something that we know that it's going to be more than that when it comes through. And I hate to bring a smaller number when I know that it's up to like this time it's up to the 400,000s. At least let's do it up to 250. Instead of 150, because it gives us a better base to start with. We know we're going to have Metro 14 come in and or Metro Cable come in for more money next year.
I think what the point, I think Mr. Dixon's point was it would get absorbed back in.
Yeah, I was just saying the net effect.
Well, no, I'm talking about.
You're talking in the future?
In the future. Yeah, I know. I understand this one.
Okay.
I think it's great.
And depending upon how you handle the 93.5, that could get built in, so that wouldn't be a reserve. It'd be out of the base, or and then if you want to reserve for other capital needs. I mean, again, it was only a plug number. It was not to confuse anything with the 150. I want to make it clear because I know it's probably added some confusion, but it certainly gave a good starting point. But
well, it did, and it ended up giving us a great number.
Yeah.
But
well, it gave an entree for the discussion.
Exactly.
I guess
but when we're looking at putting something in for a budget for the future, I'd like to look at a larger number because we know it's going to go up, and we know we have more coming in. As far as the unsolicited base with BestNet, I have no problems. Seeing and looking at what Access does, I don't really think I have a problem with that one either. I know that they work with the schools and they bring a lot to this community, and you have to, it costs money to do anything. So if we're not going to support what we have here, what do we support? So I'm okay with both of those.
Mr. Waters.
Okay, for clarification, someone on the commissioner, Rich, your chart shows 435, and I think Mr. Dickinson plugged in the 150 minus, correct? Is that now of that 435, the 150 should be deducted, right? If we're going to use the 150 plus X to get to 435 is my point.
The safer way to do
it depends on your reference point.
Yeah,
okay, that's your reference point. But my point is, the point I've tried to make is that I agree with the great job that BestNet and Access has done. I want to support that too. What I don't understand, Isla, is saying build it into the base so that we would it would be an automatic every year. How about if we do something different than call it base and take care of these programs this year and next year's budget? If they come back, then we can discuss it. This, unless I'm wrong,
I have no problem with that.
This doesn't determine what we do in future years, right?
Yes.
So what part I don't understand, what you said was the base. We plug it into the base, then we got to keep going, or we should morally keep going, or what?
Well, I think that what would happen if we built it into the base is next year the allocation would show at 2,400. Was it 2,000? No, it would show 43,500. And so it would be built into the base that you would see next year before anything else was factored in. That's what I understood about the base augmentation. And I thought, I'm willing to look at that. Yes, go ahead with it this year, but not build it into the base. And by the way, the document we got on that by email from Diane very clearly shows that the difference, the one-time capital augmentation, showed already the difference, 124,003 as the difference between this one-time capital augmentation and the 150, but you have to add back in KVIE's request 68. That brings it to 192,503 for capital requests, correct?
Correct.
And then on top of that, regardless of what we call it, whether we want to call it a base or not, if you add in the 93,005, then you're up a little over $200,000, aren't you? Quite a ways.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
Robbie, and then anyone had a clarification that might want to speak. Yeah, so we can go ahead.
Budget matter that best budgeting practices, and I'm not very good on budgets. Roger, what if we do what I hear the commission's wanting to do this year and put an asterisk or something about it and said, this is a 1 year, come back and look at next year, so it's really not what you'd call our base that we could build off of next year. So I don't know if that's possible or...
Couldn't we make a one-time adjustment this year without changing the base?
Right, but so that if we're not here, we don't remember next year, and then they think that's automatically...
Right, that's you.
If I don't remember next year, then that's automatically the base. And that's my point, that if we have a reminder with an asterisk that this is what we're doing, which I think I hear the commission saying they want to do, and we won't have that base problem next year because we'll subtract that right from the get-go, if that's agreeable.
The one thing I want to remind this commission, though, is that the $43,500 is not a significant amount of money in comparison to what Access has been cut over the last 2 years. If you look at the binder that has been given to us, they've been cut roughly 35% over the last 2 years, whereby the other entities were about 20% cut back. So that's why I was supporting the $43,500 for a base for them, because of the fact that how much they've been cut over the last 2 years.
Okay, well, again,
2 years. So that was the reason why I was supporting that $43,500.
Like, again, Mike, I think that can be, like I tried to explain, can be looked at next year. But, I support both of this BestNet and the Access. But in my opinion, BestNet is doing such an outstanding job, and they're going to every school eventually. And the product they're producing and how their teachers are even learning how to teach off of this BestNet system, I think is something I'd like to see. I will support that.
Yeah, the BestNet, I don't have a concern with creating the base for them, and then obviously the one-time capital augmentation. I wholeheartedly support that. But I think, Robbie, what we're looking to do is if we're going to create that $43,500 for a base for Access, in other words, add that on. And I think that, again, going back to the 35% that they've been cut for the last 2 years, whereby the other entities only 20%, that's where I'm saying, yes, I support this because of the cuts that they've taken over the last couple of years.
Okay. All right. Andy, and then we'll try to get to a point here. I think we're going to lose some commissioners here pretty shortly. So.
Yeah, I think it's just, kind of some semantics. We do have a bunch of discretion here, and it's a balance of how much we want to build in. When we're talking about the $43,500 and the $50,000 for BestNet, what we're really talking about is years past this year, and do we want to give them some sense of comfort that that money's going to be there the following years? I don't have a problem with that for some of the great arguments that have been made. And I think the other thing, based on the point that Roger Dickinson made, if you want to look and see what the direct effect of this full funding is, instead of the 435 column, just go to the next one over, and that'll be very good approximation. That $300,000 column will be a very good approximation of what the impacts impacts are to the various parental organizations, plus or minus a few thousand probably. So,
Yeah.
So I guess my final point is that I'm comfortable with the layout of everything that's being asked for here. Again, looking at that $300,000 column as the impact, and also extending my assurances with the inclusion of that into the base for both Access, their 43.5, and BestNet, their 50,000, saying that you can expect that from me next year and beyond. So, and that I'll turn that into a motion.
Okay, so moving second. Let me make sure everybody got their comments out on the table before I call for a vote. Anybody else?
No, I'll support that.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So let's then want to restate the motion then, so that Diane has it down real clear. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Andy. Go ahead and restate the motion.
Okay. So what we would do is pretty much how it's laid out in the spreadsheet that you sent to us, showing the one-time capital augmentation for Access of 66.5, one-time capital augmentation for BestNet 207,503, the one-time capital augmentation for KVIE of 68.5, then the base augmentation for Access at 43.5, and the base kind of the new base establishment for BestNet at 50,000.
Okay. Just a question on the 43.5. Is that tied to specific programming though? So when you say base, that the requirement they've offered a detailed program, so many hometown, and so you're going to tie it to that, or just build into their base?
I believe that's their intent.
I know,
so.
but I think it needs to be embodied, because otherwise, it doesn't tie them to that. So.
Are you comfortable with that, Ron and Carl? Okay. Okay.
All right, the seconder, understand, Mr. Lake, you okay with that?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Would you put that on the record, please, Ron, what you were just asked, so we have it on the video, please? Nothing personal, just good business.
Ron Cooper, Executive Director of Access Sacramento, and the intent as proposed is that Hometown TV is 43.5 to pay for up to 25 events to be designated throughout the county. That would be for this year, and if it were funded as part of the base, that would be the ongoing commitment that those funds would be used to create these events, and in working with you in determining what those events are.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
You said, Ron? You said entire county. That means every jurisdiction?
Yes.
Okay.
And 27 in Citrus Heights alone, James.
I'm going to revisit that motion. 27. Okay. Does the motion embody just this segment of the budget, or you want to wrap it into the rest of the budget?
Oh,
Do it all one time? Okay.
Yes.
So all the staff recommendations are included in your motion?
Okay, so with the numbers adjusted accordingly and getting rid of the 150.
Okay.
Yeah, because then it shows it's 286,003 by my math. So it puts it in that, under that 300,000.
The 877 increases by 438,003. So your new allocation for community programming is 1315003.
Right.
Okay. Diane, is that clear? Get that? Okay. All right. Just make sure, because you're going to put all the minutes together. So.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody knows the motion. We're accepting the staff recommendations as modified, read into record by Mr. Morin, and his motion is also clarified by Mr. Esposto, and that is the motion. So if there's no further questions or comments, then...
Would he repeat the total once more, though?
What I showed is that the total of the request being
Proposed
approved
budget.
for the community programming
Are you
increases...
including Metro?
No, for the
Metro's
for the grantees.
Right, grantees, right.
Is that the 877,000, which is the current base for the community programming licensees, would increase by the request they have submitted today in the amount of 438,003 for a new total of 1,315,000.
No, that's not.
Oh, that's not right, Rich.
That's not right.
Yeah.
The capital, we approved the
right.
capital.
Look.
We only included 93,000 to the base, as I understand it.
Well, he's just giving a total amount of all the augmentations. He's not subcategorizing them
Total
as...
amount of all the...
He said base.
So they're not all going to the base,
Yeah,
so...
no, the base is the 93 adjustment, excuse me, and next year's budget will reflect the 93 that you have before you. But I was trying to summarize the
I see what you did.
commitment this year. You are approving an increment this year of about 50% for grantee-based community programming.
Okay, is it clear to Ms. Collins? Yeah.
Well, as long as we read into the record
We have all the
what was into the record, because, we have about 3 charts with different stuff.
Yeah, I think the budget document clearly reflect the one-time allocations, the additional to the base, and you delineate those items, because those items will come off. They're going to be paid for this year. They're coming off next year. Your base will only reflect the 93.5.
Correct.
That's correct.
Right. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And you had a question, Diane, about Metro Cable?
I'm clear now. When I heard the larger figure, I thought he was including Metro.
Okay. Everybody clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Going to go just for a voice vote on those. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good work. Thank you, Mr. Spasto. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you all.
Thank you, commissioners. Okay. We still got a little bit of agenda to go through here, so with that, let's move very quickly down to the agenda before we lose too many commissioners. So, Rich.
Real quick, staff report. We've got a motion recommended before you to change your next meeting dates over the summer. The July meeting, unfortunately, I think all of your jurisdictions are on vacation, or most of your jurisdictions are on recess, so one to change July. Similar problems with scheduling in August and again in October. We're recommending canceling the July meeting, subject to the call of the chair for a special if needed.
Okay.
August to move to the 17th, third Wednesday. October to move to the 19th, third Wednesday.
So moved.
Okay. We have a second? Second. Okay, moving second then to approve the cancellation of the July meeting and rescheduling the August and October 2005 meetings as outlined in the staff recommendation. Motion is to approve. No other questions or comments then. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So ordered. We still have quorum in room? Yeah, we do.
Right.
Okay.
The next comment is that issues at the policy level continue in the Capitol and in Washington. I've covered that briefly before. The point I was making was that a very hard-fought piece of legislation in Texas, sponsored by SBC in their home state and by Verizon, to take to the state level cable television franchise, was narrowly defeated late Saturday night with extreme activity by local governments. There is talk, nothing certain, that similar legislation could surface in California. Likewise, the telecom reform battle in Washington is just beginning to brew. That's a quick status report. If there are specific policy issues to vote on, a bill before you or to bring a bill before you for analysis and recommendation, we'll do that. Now it's just a lot of staff work, a lot of kicking things back and forth with the players. The game, as I described before, is who wins, who loses, and who pays.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. Any questions on the status report? Okay. Thank you, Rich. All right. Next item.
We have franchisee, licensee, general status presentations, and at the moment we don't have any speaker requests.
Don't have any speaker requests. Is there anyone from Comcast, Sure West, Strategic Technologies, or Frontier that wishes to make a presentation under the franchisee, licensee, general status? Okay, we'll keep carrying that forward for the next meeting in August. And so then we're down to the opportunity for public to discuss matters not on the agenda, but within the commission jurisdiction. I did have one speaker, and that's Arthur Ketterling. Arthur? Arthur. I think he's speaking with you. Yeah. Arthur?
Arthur's talking to Jan.
Arthur? Jan. Oh, he's coming.
Trying to get our... Hey, Jan.
Jan.
Jan. We're trying to get Arthur. He's
Arthur.
supposed to speak. Does he want to speak?
Take your time, Arthur. Take your time. Take your time. That's all right. Oh, jeez. It's okay.
That's okay.
That's all right. You're pretty engaged in conversation. Good afternoon, Mr. Ketterling.
Oh, I'm Arthur Ketterling in Sacramento, and now I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Why is it? I know it would have to one of the people from Comcast that would have to probably answer it, but why is it that if you want to just continue a channel, why is it that we have to just continue that whole package instead of just dropping one channel? Is what I would like to find out.
Okay. I don't know.
Do you have reason why I'm asking?
Yeah.
There's one channel that they call TV games. I don't call it games, I call it gambling. It's horse racing, nothing but horse racing. Then late at night, they have infomercials. That's everything they have. I mean everything. There's nothing else. So there's these TV games is a bunch of baloney. That's not no games. It's gambling. And I can see it. Yeah, if I'm not trying to say that Comcast dropping the station, but I would like to have the opportunity to drop something if I want to drop it, but not the whole package on what comes along with it.
Okay.
And that's basically all that I wanted to mention.
Okay. What we can do, maybe Rich can give it a response, and we can certainly go back to.
I'd be happy to chat with Mr. Kettling after the meeting.
Okay, good. Thanks, Arthur. And Mr. Responsible will catch you right after the meeting. And if there's still further questions, we can follow up certainly with Comcast or certainly with you as the commission.
I think I know the answer.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you, Mr. Kettling. That was our only speaker on the any off-agenda items. Is there anything else the commission wishes to bring forward? Again, thank you to Rich and all our staff for your work on the budget. And Harry, anything you want to add? I know we had any communication you need to.
You have a communication from my office. If you have any questions, please give me or Jagos a call.
That was at our places today?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, very good. If that's it for business, then the commission will stand adjourned. We'll see you all back in August.
Okay.
All right.